The film opens with Clemens WlLL, a German Wehrmacht soldier, preparing to board a train. Before leaving, he meets his family. His wife Catherine, wearing a blue coat, she reveals that she is pregnant and Clemens is overjoyed. The two embrace and Clemens also says goodbye to his daughter Lisa, promising her that he will be back for Christmas. His trip is cancelled because he is accused by the Soviets of war crimes. He is found guilty of crimes against partisans and, in 1945, sentenced to 25 years of hard labor in a Gulag labor camp in the Siberian region of the Soviet Union. Clemens finds himself on an icy, overcrowded train, so he sits on the floor, leaning against the wall of the carriage. A man wakes him up, telling him it is his turn, and he pulls away from the wall, which had been blocked by the cold. He goes to the small fire, doing his best to revive it. Meanwhile, at home, a letter carrier delivers a letter to his daughter Lisa. The girl takes the letter and rushes to her mother. She enters the church and delivers the letter to her. The wife seems shaken and worried, so she quickly opens it, while Lisa watches in silence. The priest comes up behind her and asks her if it is from her husband. The wife replies that it is from the Red Cross and that there is no information about her husband. The woman is very upset and her baby, with whom she was pregnant at the time of the farewell, begins to cry. The woman goes to console the child, while Lisa recites a prayer for the father. Back in the barren landscape, the train continues its journey. Clemens talks to a man named Dan Horn, asking him what his job was before he ended up here. Dan Horn reveals that he is a cartographer, and Clemens asks him where Cape Desnav is. Dan Horn draws a map on the wall of the carriage with his finger, marking where their current location probably is. Another man says they will never get there and will starve and freeze to death before they get there. Subsequently, an argument arises between the men, but before things can escalate, the train stops. They arrive at a station with armed men in guard towers and soldiers on the ground with dogs. The bodies of people already deceased are stripped and loaded onto a truck. Clemens joins a line, each man is given 4 pieces of wood. During this process, he recalls his wife's words and thinks of the child he has not yet met, remembering his promise to his family to return for Christmas. He takes more than 4 pieces of wood and looks up to see a man with a weapon pointed at him, who starts beating him. When they return to the train, he is fed scraps, which he eats desperately. After several attempts to scrape the ice off the wall and eat it, the men become convinced that they will die of starvation, cold, or because they will be killed by the guards. Before falling asleep, Clemens pulls out a small photo of his wife and daughter. When he wakes up, it is daylight and he notices the guards begin to gather outside to take them away. The prisoners jump out of the train as soon as the doors open, falling to the ground and eating the snow. Subsequently, the guards try to regain control. Eventually the prisoners leave the station, traveling in a long line in the cold. Many of them fall from exhaustion, freeze and die in the snow. The wind is cold and the journey is very long. As they cross an icy lake, a man keels over and one of the guards shoots him, frightening one of the horses, which, panicked, rears up on the ice. One man dies, unable to be saved, sinking into the icy depths of the lake. After miles of travel, they reach the barracks, are lined up and inspected. Clemens hears the sound of ships and realizes there must be a port nearby. One of the men in line kneels down and is killed. Soon after, one of the guards, Lieutenant Kamenev, is supervising everything, commenting that only the strongest and fittest will survive. The doctor next to him, Dr. Stauffer, comments that his presence is not necessary, but Kamenev says he will be needed to draw up death certificates. Night comes and the prisoners are still being inspected. The young man next to Clemens whispers as one of the other prisoners is inspected. Kamenev notices this whisper and approaches, demanding to know what he is hiding. The young man reveals the letter and Kamenev orders him to remove his clothes. As he does so, the lieutenant tears off the letter and throws it away. Clemens begins to unbutton his coat and says he wants to give it to his comrade so that he will not freeze to death. Kamenev asks him what his name is and tells him to keep the coat, because he will need it. The prisoners are ordered to move away while the young man continues to stand there, frozen. Soon the group is marching through an archway. They are led into a kind of mine and ordered to remove their clothes, placing them in a large pile. They are washed, stripped and shaved. Clemens finds his coat, with the now faded photo of his family hidden inside. Then, the prisoners are forced to work in these mines. It is dirty, dark and exhausting work. Meanwhile, Clemens' wife tries to find him, but nothing is found. New negotiations with the Russians will take place, and the wife is forced to wait, not knowing whether her husband is alive or dead. It is 1949 and Dan Horn is killed by some stones falling on him. Clemens tries to help him, but it is too late. He is brought before Kamenev and ordered to repair a car. He starts working on it and talks to the other man in Russian. Kamenev approaches and asks him if he can really speak Russian, but he replies that he only knows a few words. He remains alone working on the machine and plans to escape at night. He hops into one of the wagons carrying coal and tries to escape. His attempt fails because he is found by one of the guards. As punishment, he is locked up in a dark hole. The lieutenant checks to see if he is still alive and tells him that even if he managed to escape, he would be sent back. Kamenev tells him that when he is pulled out of that pit, he will never leave this labor camp. The other prisoners beat him further and one of them tries to defend him. Clemens survives, although he is badly wounded. The doctor comes to examine him and says that the other prisoners are hungry, because they have not eaten anything in 5 days, due to the escape attempt. Kamenev approaches and orders that Clemens be taken to the infirmary. He has a fever and begs the doctor to help him, saying that he must send a letter home, but the doctor replies that any letter sent will never arrive. Clemens then tells the doctor that he has promised to go home, and the doctor assures him of help. Shortly thereafter he is sent back to work, although he still has a fever. Before leaving, the doctor whispers to him to come see him this evening. Clemens meets with the doctor, who tells him that before he died Dan Horn drew a map. Before the doctor can go into detail, Kamenev knocks on the door and enters. While Clemens hides, the lieutenant begins to question the doctor. He soon leaves and the doctor tells Clemens that there is not enough time to explain everything to him, handing him some clothes and boots, telling him that this is his only chance to escape and that if he goes into the mines again he will never come out, also revealing where some hidden supplies are, stating that the doctor also intended to escape but did not because of the cancer, and asks Clemens to go to this place. Clemens must find his wife and tell her where he is. Clemens promises to do so and escapes that night. He takes the hidden supplies and flees. Kamenev, realizing that Clemens is missing, confronts the doctor, but the latter is already dead. Now the other remaining prisoners are punished for Clemens' escape. One of the prisoners declares that he will never beat another fellow prisoner again, so he is shot dead. That evening, one of the scouts sent to look for Clemens returns and reports that they have not found him. The scout says they have been looking for him for 5 days and that Clemens is probably dead. Kamenev is not satisfied and believes he is alive. Days later, after running out of food, Clemens finds a seal and kills it. He continues to travel for days and eventually finds a tree, which he hugs. One night, he is found by 2 men who offer him help, but he, frightened, refuses the offer and tells them to leave. After a heavy thunderstorm, he becomes trapped by a fallen tree and the other men find him again. This time, he accepts their help and follows them. He stays with them for some time before he is found by a nomadic Chukchi shepherd, who rescues him from a pack of wolves. One of them, Irina, falls in love with him. He stays with the Chukchi for a short time and leaves shortly thereafter, discovering that the Soviets are still looking for him. The nomads give him a dog as a gift and he continues on his long journey. It is the summer of 1951 and Clemens is walking in the forest. His dog hears a noise, runs up a hill and starts barking. He goes to call him back, trying to leave quickly, but the man whose dog was barking orders him to show himself. He is questioned by a man in charge of logging operations. Clemens reveals to him his real name and where he is going. The man offers to put him on the train as a brakeman, and he accepts. However, he soon realizes that it is a trap and when he arrives at his destination, Lieutenant Kamenev and his men are already waiting for him. The dog sacrifices himself and attacks Kamenev, leaving him permanently scarred. Clemens goes on the run, pursued by soldiers. He jumps off a bridge and lands on top of a passing train. It is 1952 and Clemens reaches Central Asia. He is wandering through a market, observing the food around him. As he walks, a boy gives him some bread and Clemens hides to eat it. Later, he goes to pray at an altar and a Polish Jewish priest offers him a place to stay. They drink tea together and Clemens gets some sugar and mixes it with his finger. The man helps him obtain a passport, despite knowing that he is German. As a result, he continues his journey using the passport and buys a postcard, as he had promised his daughter many years earlier. Meanwhile, Kamenev finds and interrogates the Jew who saved him and gave him the passport. The man admits to helping Clemens, saying he would do it again, and dies, probably from a pre-existing heart problem. Clemens, unable to continue the journey because of a landslide on the road, continues on foot. He reaches customs and, after a tense moment at passport control, is allowed to cross the border into Iran. As he crosses the bridge, he is greeted by Kamenev himself. Kamenev stares at him for a long time before stepping aside to allow Clemens to cross, declaring, "I have defeated you." He is then locked up in a federal prison in Tehran and sentenced to death on suspicion of being a Soviet spy. His uncle, who has not seen him since 1937, is brought in from Ankara to identify him. Clemens immediately recognizes him, calling him uncle, but the man claims not to recognize him. The uncle shows him a photo album, which Clemens flips through, providing specific details about various photos. Eventually the two tearfully embrace and Clemens is released. At Christmas he finally returns home to West Germany and watches his family through the window. Everyone leaves the house to go to church and Clemens follows them. His daughter sees him walking and runs to hug him. His wife, in shock, gets up from her chair and slowly approaches him. They all hug together crying with joy.